So I just finished playing through the new Plague Tale Requiem, and I totally recommend it. I had such a great time, and I want to yap about it quite a bit, because as you guys probably know if you've been watching me for a minute, the 2019 Plague Tale Innocence is one of my favorite games ever, just because it's basically like what I'm about. It's what I'm here for. It's why when I played the original Metal Gear Solid and I saw that games could be these cool adventures with wild stories, like that's the type of game I like the most. And Plague Tale, the new one, it really kind of like when I finished it, I found myself just sitting there going, shit, I love video games. Like, damn, I love video games. Dude, that's what I look for at this point. Like, that's the stuff that keeps me going. Like, when I can come and like I know I sit down in front of the camera and talk about a game that I just really, really, truly love with not really a lot of issues to it, that makes me very, very happy. Does that sound corny? Is that weird? I don't know. Maybe I should leave that out. Regardless, the new game, and I'm not going to spoil anything, just so you know, is just an incredible adventure with a really, really cool and emotional story that just made me feel things. I loved seeing where this adventure would go, and honestly, I wasn't sure where it would go, and I never really expected them to make a sequel. It made sense, but I was just worried whether or not they could capture that lightning in a bottle again, and the new game definitely feels a little different, but I love where it went. Too many people slept on the first game, so now there should just be another excuse to jump into these. If you did play the original, essentially this is just a furthering adventure of Amicia and Hugo, and everything's a bit more intense. The stakes are higher, you go to way more locations, it feels like a bigger adventure. They bring in new characters that I actually think work really well. They kind of also subvert your expectations in some ways. The new characters showed up, and a lot of them felt like typical archetypes in a lot of stories or adventures, but they ended up being something completely different and really provided to the story in a lot of good and emotionally satisfying ways. But ultimately, of course, it's down to the brother-sister, Amicia and Hugo, and it is perfect. It is just so well told, and like what they're trying to do with that relationship between the brother and sister is just really, really put forth in a convincing, no BS way that like I didn't have to like put too much into. I didn't have to assume a lot or like be like, okay, yeah, they're brother and sister, so they should this. No, the game does a really good job of showing it all and making you really feel that, and that's what makes it so effective. That's what makes the adventure so effective. And playing it, also, the stakes are higher because at this point, Amicia is a little bit more of a badass. In the first game, you're pretty helpless. I mean, you have your sling. You can fling rocks, and if a dude is not wearing a helmet, you can murder him with a rock to the face. And in the first game, too, you use all these little tricks to douse out flames and essentially send hordes of these plague rats to kill your enemies in a lot of ways. And in the second game, it still completely relies on those tricks. I was a little worried that it didn't have too many new tricks, so I was curious to see if the gameplay would outstay its welcome, and I'd say it just managed to nail it. They give you just enough to kind of change things up. Amicia is a little more capable. She can hit some dudes sometimes. You can get a limited use, like one-shot knife sometimes to stab some dudes. You have something to save you in a quick pinch if you're swarmed by hordes of these rats. It's just smoother, quicker, less clunkier overall. But ultimately, it is still a stealth game, and it's a pretty simple stealth game. It's one that I often criticize, where it's like you just hide in tall grass and wait for a guy to walk by. But around that, this time around, they've built some pretty layered and intensive stealth encounters where there's tons of enemies looking for you. The maps, like these areas, are way, way bigger with tons of different levels of verticality and places to hide. I found a lot of them, my first playthrough, pretty challenging and actually a little frustrating sometimes. The guards are a little unpredictable, but I realized like, oh, it's in a good way, where you get so used to a guard walking the same path, but if one thing is thrown off, the guard doesn't just like seemingly go to investigate and then go back to his regular path sometimes. Sometimes a guard would just completely go somewhere else and totally screw me up. So there's a lot of trial and error, and for some people that can be frustrating, but for me, I like to try and perfect stealth these games as much as possible, so I was into it. There is a new projectile weapon that they added that works in certain specific situations, and essentially the way it all works, and it's how it worked in the first game, is that like a lot of these things you can use to attack your enemies, but also to solve these environmental puzzles. How to get through this world filled with dangerous sections or enemies or just like plague-filled hordes, and it does a good job this time of onboarding you, where in the first half of the game I was pretty frustrated a lot of the time, but by the second half, when I had all my tools, I actually found myself not always using all of those tools, and just stealthing and smoking my way through everybody, and it felt really satisfying. Like, it's no Splinter Cell Chaos Theory or Thief or anything, but it's effective and it works, and you still feel the threat. You still feel like you are a younger person, a less powerful, capable person, hiding from just big medieval dudes in suits of armor. And that powerlessness is still there in the gameplay elements, but they still do a good job of tweaking it a little bit, and with the story as well, making Amicia feel like somebody who's more capable, but also somebody who is dealing with new things. She's definitely going through some new things. And what I wanted to say before really is that for me, what really sold a lot of this is that the voice actors, specifically with Amicia and Hugo, are like, I feel like they're way better this time around. Like, at first I almost thought they got new voice actors. I know I haven't replayed the original game since it came out, but like, they just really sell all that stuff I was talking about earlier. The emotions, the connections to the brother-sister connection, you know? And ultimately, the adventure is bigger, badder, and more destructive than the original game. Now, the original game, I loved it so much for having these striking, gruesome scenes, just horrific imagery of places racked by plague, bodies piling high, battlefields covered with blood, these nasty, creepy, gross plague rats. Essentially, this game takes a lot of those concepts and really goes even harder on it in a lot of ways, and a little bit more fantastical in some ways. And it absolutely freaking worked, dude. The amount of times in this game I found myself just kind of stopping and using the new photo mode that is included and just taking pictures. I was just in awe of so many of the sites they created in this game. The environment designs are once again really on point, but the stakes are higher because the action's kind of ramped up.
It does definitely feel different in terms of like color palette, locations, and some of the characters introduced. I still think I like the vibes of the first game a little better, but it's not a big deal. But with things being ramped up, things being crazier, more over the top, everything more complex, to me, it didn't feel like it really lost what's important about these games. If anything, I feel like it kind of doubled down on what makes Plague Tale specifically with how as everything gets crazier in this game, the stakes get higher, it still really boils down to the relationship between the brother and sister, and how, I think, like, this might sound crazy, but like, there's a lot of adventures and movies and games where important, intimate characters' relationships are in the middle of something bigger, like saving the world or blowing up a Death Star or Tale as Old as Time, yada, yada, yada. But they really did a great job of really making you feel the relationship this time around, where, like, yes, you should be saving the world from the plague or whatever, but there is a laser focus on the relationship between these two, which has been developed between the previous game and this, and really a strong focus on telling this story and asking questions about doing everything for your loved ones, pushing some things too far, and kind of the idea of, like, the consent of that family member for you doing whatever it takes. It really was beautiful, man.
It does a lot of encouraging non-violent, fully stealthy playthroughs, a lot of the times through dialogue and with what Amicia is going through. There's kind of like a bloodlust thing where if you kill and snipe and sneak your way through, you don't get penalized, but characters will be like, whoa, maybe take it easy, which is interesting. But then on the gameplay progression side of it, there are essentially skill trees. There are 3 tiers that organically grow depending on how you play. If you're completely perfect stealth, don't kill anyone. There's like a stealth one that you level up and you get more abilities as it fills, where it's like you can crouch faster, you make less noise, stuff like that. If you're just crafting stuff all the time and embracing the alchemy and all the little things you can fling, and if you use them for the right situations at the right times, that will level up so that crafting is easier and stuff like that. And if you're just a violent, murderous person, that will level up as well and make you more capable in combat in little ways. And I thought it was a cool little system where it was like, even though I tried to stealth it most of the time and not touch anyone, I did wish that my meter for aggression would level up and I would get some of those tricks, because that would have helped. But I liked how it kind of very simply, very chill, not in your face, gently rewarded you for playing a certain way. It was a nice way to kind of expand on the original game's formula, and also like a little bit more like upgrading your stuff. It just kind of worked for the progression, for the flow. And I think that also went a long way with the gameplay not feeling a little like it ran out of tricks. You know, it continued a lot of stuff from the first game, but it didn't overstay its welcome, which is interesting because it's a pretty long game. I think it took me like 20 hours. So for a full adventure game where everything is new all the time, I was really happy. It felt like a pretty long adventure, and I was really satisfied. Now, it's worth pointing out, I did talk about the visuals and just how incredible the game can look. The scenery, absolutely stunning. The gore, the violence, the amount of rats swarming, really, really incredible. But playing the game on PS5, the performance took a hit, man, like big time. The frame rate is all over the place, where every once in a while it's like 60 frames. Most of the time it is not, and it fluctuates, and it can dip hard when there's a lot going on screen. I don't know what's going on here. The performance aspect definitely disappointed me here with Plague Tale, I'll say that. It did not make the game unplayable by any means. I do want to put that out there, but again, I was still a little bummed because again, I thought otherwise it was like a perfect adventure. I know that sounds pretty strong, but I just really, and it's so hard without spoiling anything. But yeah, playing it was fun. Again, I think some people maybe towards the end, they might think that some of those gameplay, those stealth encounters are kind of getting a little long-winded, but I thought it was paced really well. There were some really, really incredible encounters and really good face-offs that I liked. Characters that I actually fell in love with and grew to love just as much as Amicia and Hugo. The places this place took you, the stakes being higher, the insane action going on screen that like I can't really show you, but there is some wild shit goes down, and in a story that is filled with emotion that actually left me saying, holy shit, I love video games. This is why I love playing stuff. This is why I love doing this. Like, hell yeah. Also, it's all backed up by incredible music, seemingly like real orchestral stuff, real chorus singing, just makes everything really epic and really amps things up. And I think it just hit right. I feel like I needed a game like this right now. Just a good old solid adventure. So if you're looking for something like that, if you can't tell, I highly recommend this game. I think like for a middle, like AA publisher, developer, to create something this epic, you know, and I actually use that word, I don't mean like epic, but like seriously epic, real tale with cool stuff, always kind of moving forward and new things happening in the game, is just really worth celebrating. I say this a lot, but it's like we always have like some strong indie games and then big AAA games that can be absolutely crazy or super disappointing. And the middle games, we really need these to exist. Previous generations of video games had a lot more of these, but I celebrate Focus Home and Asobo, the developers, for making this. I'm gushing. I'm getting ridiculous here. So I just want to know what you think. If you're watching this later when the game comes out, definitely know how you're feeling on it. I'd love to also just know, like, if you played the first game, what your thoughts are on it. I'll try to answer whatever questions I can for you guys down in the comments. Hit me if you want. I'll be down there as much as possible. Although I am currently chugging along on multiple other games. Do I look tired? You guys always comment that I look tired. This is just what I look like, because I'm always just playing a lot. But let me know what you think about Plague Tale in general. Hit me up with any questions if you got them. I'll try to do what I can, but keep your eyes peeled for more videos here. I'm very busy. Clicking a like button, it helps me. Thank you. But I'm just talking about stuff I love here, guys. I'm Jake Baldino. Thanks for watching. Subscribe because video games. Pizza's on me.